I don't remember. Shut up. It's like, you know, people ask you contract questions, there's only like
Good afternoon. heard of you. Okay.
Can you hear us now, member friends?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
All right, okay.
Sorry about that.
All right, so member friends and all, we were just covering really the timeline of the IGA renewal. So we've spent the last six or so months reviewing, making edits, and we have recommendations. The next step in the process is to have you all as our stakeholders really weigh in on our changes and either approve or make recommendations on changes before we submit it out to the consortium. We are going to do this twice. So we're going to have the discussion today, which is really all about the meat of the changes, the meat of the agreement. And then in January, we'd like for you all to approve that, but also we will have a discussion on some financial components that are associated with the IGA. One deals with termination fees associated with anyone who's leaving the consortium. We believe that there are financial obligations that they have to live up to and address. And then the second one is bringing the billing process current. Right now, agencies pay in arrears. We bill them after the year. We receive funding from ETSB and DuPage County to pay our bills, to pay for personnel, and pay for all of our contractual services and software. And then we bill at the end of the year. We're requesting to change that and bring it current. So we have financial models to kind of help the agencies hopefully, be able to absorb that cost, the change over a period of time. We'll talk about those, but the goal today is really talk about the content in the agenda. The financial models we'll talk about more in January during our special call. The goal is to set that in mid-January, give you some time through the holidays to review the IGA, and then we meet and go over the financial changes in January. All right, and then from January to March, we're going to hand it over to the agencies pending your approval. They're going to take a look at it, review it with their legal teams, with their internal teams. They may have recommended edits. So our goal is then take those edits by March 1st through the 13th to finalize it, get final approval from this governing body and get final approval. And then from April 12th through April 26th, we're going to work with them to sign and execute, right? Get all 32 signatures from all 32 participating agencies. So I'll pause for a second. Any questions about the timeline? Great. All right, let's get into the meat of it. So there are roughly 7 material changes in the IGA. If you had an opportunity to read through it, you'll see a lot of edits. Some are formatting, some are cosmetic changes, but the bulk of the meat of the changes really have to do with these 7 items. So the first item has to do with us changing the title of the equipment replacement fund. We would like to change it to a reserve fund. The main purpose behind that is to help with us bringing the billing current, right? And in order to do that, we need to have a fund to use, to manage that money. And we're also hoping to potentially take advantage of the equipment replacement funds to help agencies absorb that impact, right, of the change. And to bring us current, let me talk about that again for a second. In order to bring us current, because we're paying in the arrears, that means either we have to make a double payment in 1 year, or we have to stretch the payments out over a period of time, right? Either way, we would like to change the equipment replacement fund to a reserve fund to help us do that and get there. So want to take a pause before I move on to the next point to make sure, A, everyone understands that, B, to see if anyone has any questions or concerns.
Yes.
So definitely understand the concepts. Probably talk more about the issue of the catch up and coming current as we go through it. But I do have a concern. I think the equipment replacement fund is a really good idea and should continue to be in place. If we need a reserve fund or a rainy day fund or a fund for smoothing to address the timing of the billing, I think I'd be more likely to support three funds: an operating fund, a rainy day reserve fund, and make sure that that ERF fund stays there, because eventually we will need to replace the system, and then all the members would be able to feel confident that we have enough money in a separate fund to do so.
If I may, so based off that, because I know I'll be one of the individuals helping redraft this. If we put something in there and did it as, it can all be in one bank account with three balance funds, and then we'll do the interest bearing on that just for the benefit, that would be an acceptable solution.
To me personally, yes, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure so we can clarify that in the IGA.
And Member Philman, just to make sure I'm clear, the purposes, one of the major purposes of that is for auditing and bookkeeping,
Sure.
right? Just to keep it clean.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts on that? All right, moving on to the second item, then thank you very much for that feedback. We'll make adjustments. And for those of you who would like to know where that is, it's in section, section 1, it's 1.09. So, all right, second item requires county IT to seek, so we're making an adjustment to the agreement, and now county IT will seek the approval of this committee, basically for authorization of major staffing changes that exceed budgetary personnel costs. So that's self-explanatory. We will come to this board directly for authorization and approval. Thoughts on that one? Okay.
Seems to be a consensus.
Okay. Moving on to change number 3, authorizing payments of budgetary payroll expenditures without approval. The main reason we're requesting this, you all approve our budgets. So we're asking that we not have to wait on a quarterly basis to get approval on personnel changes. Those changes happen often, right? Sometimes monthly.
That's payroll too, right?
And payroll, yep. So thank you.
You want to meet monthly for payroll.
Okay. Any
Looks like we have a consensus on that too.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, moving on to item number 4. So in item number 4, we are essentially requesting to have this committee PRMS basically paid for audits that have been paid for by the ETSB budget in the past. So.
Right, I'll count it when you're done.
Okay, all right. You sure you want to make your comment in?
Well, we have to look into it, because I believe that portion of the budget, because it's in the ETSB company, is audited with us, but I have to be sure.
Okay.
That's the only part I don't know.
Okay.
And so I want to verify that, because I don't know that it's actually being done. And then I don't know, I mean, if it is, then it's easy to split that cost amongst those companies in the audit. If it's not, then you're gonna have a different question, because it wouldn't be included. And I don't know, Jeff, we were gonna ask Melanie, and we haven't gotten that back yet, so. Because the Baker Tilly cost for us is about 30,000 plus or minus, so.
And if we absorb that cost, it may be 30,000 if it's done separately, or it could be a portion of the 30,000.
Right, that's the part I don't know yet. I know what you're hoping for, but I don't know what the answer is.
But ultimately, in the agreement, we're taking on responsibility of we potentially may take on the responsibility of paying for those financial audits. There are 2 audits throughout the year that ETSB currently pays for. So we'll get answers, I think, from finance, and then we'll follow up with you. All right, number 5, this one empowers this committee to pay invoices from the Police Records Management Operating Fund directly. That has not happened today. I think it's, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's through ETSB and through the DuPage County General Fund. So we're saying for it to be paid directly out of the PRMS Operating Fund.
Correct.
Which makes sense from an accounting perspective. It's cleaner that way. Okay. Any questions, concerns on that one?
Okay,
Okay, the number 6 is really easy. This is really identifying language within the agreement that addresses items that have already happened or that have already been addressed, right? It's really cleanup work for the agreement. At the onset of the agreement, there are things that happened once before, like implementation, other things. We clean that up in this agreement. And then last but not least, item number 7 requires members to provide termination notice and quarterly updates. This is in section 7.03, 7.04. You'll see language in there that basically gives us a process now. We didn't really have a process before, except for asking for members to, agencies to submit basically a letter. This is saying that agencies have to submit a formal notice to the Oversight Committee. The agencies have to give the Oversight Committee the ability to remedy whatever the concern is first before they leave. And then at the very end, if they decide to move forward, they have to give us a date of when they're going to leave and then provide quarterly updates until they leave. It also addresses in 7.4 termination fees that will be associated with leaving the consortium. So any thoughts or questions about 7?
everybody? Yes,
Just real quick, I know we're not talking details of the dollars yet, but the concept of, if we enter into this agreement with an expectation that costs are shared over X number, any termination should have some requirement to at least cover fixed costs during that same period. So that's the concept that I think when we get into it.
That's absolutely right.
That's exactly what we're looking at in regards to some of the hardware costs on a month-by-month basis or whatever that may stretch out to be. We got to do the math on that specifically, but yeah.
Yeah, the financial review will give you all of the details, but that is the general concept. So things that are fixed costs that we have no control over, those things have to be paid for.
I was going to make just a similar comment if I could, but the draft agreement is kind of silent on that at the moment. Now, maybe you're still working through that language, but I think it needs to be strengthened a little bit in section 7.04.
Number of friends, I can indicate the reason it's the way we left it is we wanted it to be a decision of this board of what they're looking for. So depending on some conversations today, we'll strengthen it and make it fit the needs and requirements of this committee.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
One last item that isn't listed on this list, but I do want to bring to your attention is section 705. I think it's important for you guys to understand the language here. This is about a midterm assessment of the Hexagon contract. So we're saying in 2 years, we're going to take a look at the contract and the collective body will make a decision on whether we move forward with that contract or if we look for another solution to replace it. So I think what's important here, and I want to reinforce this, is that this entire body is strong because of the collective might of the entire group. So in order for us to be successful, you need to have all parties involved the data of all parties involved. That data is used across all law enforcement agencies throughout DuPage County in order to be effective, right? So that's super important to us. So the point I'm trying to make here is that either through Hexagon or another two, it's important for, I think, the entire consortium to stay strong and stay together, right? If there's a big issue with the application, we can talk about, first do an assessment of whether the application works for us or not. If it doesn't, really have a serious conversation about what can work for the entire consortium. But I think that's super important to mention, is that it is important for law enforcement agencies throughout DuPage County to work together, to share information, to collaborate, across organizations, and they do that now through PRMS and this consortium. If we break it apart, it weakens the consortium and it weakens them as individual agencies. All right. All right, so that's it for the material changes. Here are the two big items that I think will require a little more discussion, and also leads back to our special call in January. It's the kind of impetus for that. So the first one is really the billing correction piece, really bringing billing current. Again, things are paid in the rear. The request of the PRMS team, ETSB and county, the county finance team, is that we bill current year and we collect those funds in that current year. So that means that we have to come up with a creative way to do that. Because we are a year behind. So we have to have agencies come current and then pay for the current year. So it's almost like a duplicate billing for you. But our goal is to work on different funding options that will help ease that financial burden on the agencies as much as we possibly can. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
If I could, I'd like to understand better as we continue this conversation, the reasoning behind the request to go to current billing, just so we better understand what's driving that. And then, of course, this kind of key term change could have significant negative financial impacts on municipalities. So I think most municipalities, including Downers, would react as we don't love this idea, right? Because of that. But if there was a solid reasoning behind it, and we understood it, and we're supportive of it, then figuring out a way to smooth that impact would be very important to us, because there would be, if we did it all at once and you paid twice in 1 year, but you wouldn't get double the service, right? So those are the things that are, I think, important to the municipal members, just trying to figure out how to manage that change, and understanding why is it important for the ETS and the county to make that change in the first place would be helpful as we consider that.
Do you want me to, Lynn, or do you want to make any comments to that? Or Jeff, if you really want. Okay. So I think I'll start, and then please, other county folks, pepper in as you feel appropriate. I think a couple different things on this. One is the county is trying to not be in arrears, period. Right now, yes, we may have money to be able to upfront it, but depending on future fiscal, anything that might occur, we can't always promise that we're going to be able to front things always, and that's what we're doing right now. As well as, I believe some of the ETSB money is being used as upfront, and it's just cleaner not to do it in that sense, using that funds. Those funds are specifically dedicated for that, and we just want to ensure that's not commingled anything in that way, shape, and or form. But then I believe, and I think we've heard this from a couple municipal members, as well as the timing of the invoicing, we'd like to kind of fix and make that easier for individuals as well. But I think the bigger issue there is it's knowing that we might not always be able to front it. So let's fix it before we might have that issue. But we agree with you in the sense of, obviously, a double bill in 1 year sum is probably not the most reasonable or easy way to do it. So if we look at this over the course of 3 or 4 years and do it with a certain percentage, that might be possible. I know Anthony and his team will be working with finance to look at a couple options of how we could do it and look at what those numbers might be. Say we do it over a 3 year course and it's 33% extra for that. I mean, that maybe that's not the number, but whatever that number might look like, getting it to where we have that third rainy day fund or whatever to cover that. We can build it up and put it off to that side, get it to where it's finally paid up. I think that's the best way to describe where that comes from. Is there anyone, am I wrong on any of that? Is there any addition to that?
Well, the other question is ETSB, you want to get out of pre-funding PRMS, right?
Correct. So the ETSB can't use 911 surcharge funds for these, well, it can't use it for these types of projects indefinitely. We shouldn't be doing that. Not that it's illegal or unlawful for us to do it, but the ETSB shouldn't be using those funds for these projects that are not directly tied to the delivery of 911 service between the caller and the first responder.
Yeah, so, in the original agreement, there was the capital fund so that we can get out of the capital cost. The county has personnel in the general fund, so the goal here is to create your own company in the budgeting process so that everything's under one category too. So you're looking at the first bump would be getting personnel current instead of in arrears. And then, I think that overall, there's an expectation of the current contract we're in was something ETSB would front and be reimbursed, which allows, I think, a little easier smoothing to get you where we all need to go or want to go, or where the recommendation is that we go. So I think that kind of helps where we're trying to go and get it to the point. Because the other thing is, there is a possibility that this group may want to have a different RMS system. And if it's not under the Hexagon contract, then you'd be carrying your own, this relationship would kind of terminate, because other than you connecting to CAD, whichever CAD the PSAPs choose, you'd have your own contract. So part of the reason ETSB is here is because you have a joint contract. So you would also need to prepare for that. And I think our discussion with our state attorney is if we're not under the same, it's easy when we're the joint contract, but if you were to go a different way, it would be a little bit more funky to have ETSB front money for something that is wholly not something they're doing or it's doing. And there's the rules on diversion of funds that's changing quite a bit from the FCC, and the state is looking at what their guidance is going to be. So this is somewhat preparation for that. If we're in the process, we can always say, we're trying to get there, but we don't want to make impact on people, municipalities, and pull the rug underneath everybody for double payments or triple payments, because when you look at all those numbers, it kind of adds up quickly.
When would we be looking at the first payment or the first installment to be due?
So what I think it would be, we'd first have to get the new IGA done and completed first. So I think as we're reviewing the terms on that, that's probably a discussion we would have to figure out when that'd be. And based off our initial conversation, I think we'd be willing to work with people on the invoicing side of that and determining what's easiest for the municipality at that standpoint. But we kind of have to first see what we all want to do so we can see how those numbers look. Then we can figure out how we can invoice you to make it to where it works your financial side of it. I think Member Fran's hand's raised as well, just wondering.
Go ahead, Member Franz.
Thank you. Good discussion. Really appreciate Anthony, both you giving us a heads up call yesterday and have this conversation, a month in advance of when we're really trying to make these changes. So appreciate the process. I asked this of Anthony yesterday, but I obviously didn't give you a lot of time to research it. What is our current process? The invoices go out fall, September, November, and
Yep.
and for what period of time is that supposed to be covering?
Yeah, so Member Franz, take a look at the screen. So I did cover it, so thank you. This is a timeline of our billing process, which always covers the previous year. This is just an example for this particular year. At the beginning of a fiscal year in December, in this particular case, December 2023, we send out the bills to the agencies. Then the next step is to give the agencies an opportunity to pay us. We realize their fiscal years may be different or a little off, or you know, when they need to pay. So we give them 6 months. From January of the previous month to May of the previous year to May of the new year, we give them 6 months to make those payments. Reimbursements to ETSB and to county budget department, finance department, we try to complete after we receive all those funds. So usually from June to November, we are transferring money to those accounts to address that. Now, when things are invoiced, it really varies throughout the fiscal year. And then payroll, of course, we have payroll payments that happen monthly.
Okay, so for this invoicing cycle, this is for services received from when to when?
December 1st of 2022 to November 30th, 2023. It's always a year in the rear.
Okay. And Linda, when does ETSB pay for, I forget, is it 50% of the cost of the system? When does ETSB pay?
We pay everything.
So you pay it all like in January probably then or something.
No, it's, so if it's not a capital, if it's not equipment, because that's every couple of years, the annual maintenance is in
July 1.
July. There you go. Thank you, Eve.
Okay, so would ETSB be willing to move up the payment to like January? Because that would still be within our fiscal year, not have an impact. I'm talking from an ETSB member now for a minute. And then could we go back to our vendor and say, you're going to get half payments in January and half payments by June from the rest of the members?
Well, I think it's stated in the contract, so we'd have to do a change order if we were gonna make a payment, a remittance change. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's more the issue of your reimbursement than us being able to cover the cost at this point.
But if I'm saying this right, I probably am not articulating this right. We're paying now in July, we'd be paying them 50% in January and the rest in July. So I don't know if they'd have an issue with that necessarily. Unless I'm missing something. I'm not looking for an answer now, I guess. I'm just wondering if we can work with our vendor here a little bit. Maybe they can help solve some of this.
Are you talking, well, I mean, I suppose if you're going to pick up, if I understand this correctly, and we're going to take more discussion, but so on the ETSB pays all maintenance, and then at the end of, when the invoicing goes out, then we get reimbursed from the agencies. So what we're trying to smooth is the link between ETSB paying and when the agencies would start picking up their portion directly or being billed directly when we pay. So if you're talking about, could we split the RMS costs into 2 payments, I'm sure that's possible.
And then we just have to hold, the municipal members to getting payments by May, and then the county would be collecting those and paying the rest of the 50% in June versus letting it linger from June to November. I think that's unfair for us to expect that you guys are going to cover it for that period of time. And if we have a reserve fund, we hopefully have a few dollars to cover if somebody is late. Just, again, thinking out loud and brainstorming a bit more than anything else.
So, Member Friend, what I'm not clear on, and Linda may have it covered better than me. So how does that address the double payment, though? Does it help me with that part?
Well, I guess I'm trying to avoid a double payment.
Okay.
If Hexagon is, I'm not sure what Hexagon's, I don't think Hexagon's really driving this. ETSB and the county is driving this. But if we're making payment for the year, let's say 2023, and making half payment in January and half in May, I think we've solved the problem, haven't we?
So are you thinking that it's smoother for the agencies if they're billed twice a year at a smaller amount than one lump sum?
No, I'm not suggesting we change the invoicing at all. I'm just saying E ETSB pays 6 months in advance because that's not going to mess up their fiscal year. And we hold the municipalities to paying by May of every year versus, I guess that's what they're doing now, but it sounds like it's lingering into as long as November, but from this chart.
So member France, hold on, this is, I too, I want clarity here. So because we're billing in the rear a year essentially, and we're trying to get it to where the money is there for the following. Your idea, I understand keeping the, but doesn't that still keep us a year behind?
I don't think it's unreasonable or uncommon that we're paying after we receive the service. And again, I don't think the vendor is driving this. It's E ETSB and the county, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think the end goal is to get E ETSB out of the funding side of it. For,
Well, 50% funding side of it, they're gonna always be paying 50% of these costs.
No,
No,
because in the contract, the only, it's a 70-30 split today for capital. And so that part, we'd always be paying 70-30, but that's a 3 to 4 year replacement deal. That's the capital. So you're already saving for the capital cost, and that would be the 30% of the hardware. You have an annual maintenance, and your portion of the contract is specifically spelled out for RMS costs. So we pay all of it on your behalf. So we pay the CAD portion of the maintenance, we pay the RMS portion of the maintenance, we pay all of that, and then when the county invoices, they're invoicing you for that reimbursement of that maintenance, but it's specific in the contract. So for E ETSB to continue to pay, that's not the issue. The issue is how we get it to, like, when an invoice comes, as a village manager, you have several accounts, and so sometimes you're billing Public Works or the police department for something, and you put 2 codes on an invoice. That's the part we want to get to. So it comes out of your account and our account at the same time, and we're not fronting that money. And so how do we flatten that? And it's more, the payroll side is probably the harder lift. The maintenance we can flatten because we have a couple of years left in the contract, so we can work on smoothing that part out because there's an expectation. I think when you entered into this agreement that ETSB would be paying and you'd be reimbursing in arrears. So the first part I think we should try to correct is to get personnel squared away, and then we work out the reimbursement, because at that point, then we're going to be entering into a new contract wherever, whether you're going on your own or we're all staying with Hexagon, because the CAD group would like to look at an RFP too. So we could all be going someplace else. And then, which is why we're talking about it now, because if you end up going someplace else 3 or 4 years from now, you want to have that money ready, because otherwise it's going to be a really major hit for everybody to make that swing, because you'd be going with whatever capital costs. Because if you go, if you separate and we're not sharing equipment, or it could be cloud-based, so this could be a different discussion. But assuming it was hardware, you would be picking up your own hardware if you go with a different vendor than the CAD side. So it's the prep of all of that.
So the issue is, how do we get PRMS to stand alone financially? We have to put a certain amount of money in there up front to pay for all the budgetary costs during the year without utilizing ETSB and the county to pay for payroll costs. So, we're going to be brainstorming some ideas, and we've already talked about that. But the big quandary is, and we kind of knew this going in, what the effect would be to the members because of a double billing. And we did talk about trying to get some seed money in there, and then, ramping up the billing maybe by 25% a year for the next 4 years, and eventually building a fund balance in the PRMS fund so it can stand on its own.
Yeah, I guess if I could just add, again, good to start brainstorming. I think we really want to figure out a way to not impact all the members. And this contract is 5 years old. This is a pretty significant shift. So obviously, I don't have all the dollars and cents straight. I thought ETSB was paying a larger share of that to begin with, but I think we got to talk through other alternatives. ETSB is sitting on a pretty significant reserve fund. You know, I think that's probably why back in the 5 years ago, we thought it was a fine way to set this up. I'm not sure why we need to go away from it.
And that, member friends, I want to ask our assistant state's attorney as well as member Zerwin here. And that's due to the FCC changes with how ETSB funds are used, right? So we're more coinciding with what the ruling or whatever the regulations are on that. That's why we're trying to pull it out. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, the FCC is rulings on diversion of 911 surcharge funds.
So those aren't 5-year-old rulings though, right? That these have okay, so this was September. That would be I think the true epitome of this conversation starting was because of those rulings in September.
So
Love to hear more on that. I feel like I'd like to be educated on that chain.
That's forthcoming.
We'll do a memorandum on it.
So I would like to just make the recommendation that we focus on the special call and the details. So we're going to work on the different models. I'd like to present some of that to you prior to special call so that you can take a look at it, member friends and the rest of the members. But we can have a deeper conversation, I think, or more in-depth conversation in January when you have those models in front of you and you'll have a better idea of the true impact, right? If we decide to do 25% or 20% or 33% per year, or one of the recommendations is to really take a look at the equipment replacement fund and reassess our needs for that amount. And, you know, I believe that it may be lower, right, than what the original call was for that fund. So if that's the case, we may be able to reallocate some of those funds, at least temporarily, to help soften the blow, I think is what we could do. So, all right, the models that we're going to share with you and cover with you in January, we'll have all of that listed, and we can really have a good conversation about how we move this forward.
Can we just 2 quick comments?
Yeah, please.
One is, again, I'm not, obviously I've got a municipal hat on, but you know, the county's pays for a fair share of this records management system too. So, I mean, this would be beneficial to the county if we can figure out a less painful solution. I know we're all going to try to find that. And then secondly, if you could possibly send out, you know, the budget and what the invoice is and just give me a little, at least I'm going to need a refresher on how we pay and that might spur some other ideas of how we can manage this.
Okay, that's not a problem.
Anybody else? Other comments, questions?
One more item, Chairman,
Yeah.
before we finish.
Of
So
course.
sorry, going back to the last slide.
So close.
So we covered the billing correction and bringing us current. We'll have further discussions in January about that one. The second one that we will probably have more discussions about as well is the member termination costs. So there are financial obligations that ETSB, because of the Hexagon contract, PRMS, and the county still have to cover to help us maintain this consortium. So our recommendation is to include some financial, I don't want to say penalties, but some costs to help us cover those, you know, cover those things. So we'll talk about that more as well in January. We're going to list out what that is and what our recommendation is. But we're open to any thoughts, ideas that you may have about this. So this essentially says that when a member agrees to be a part of the consortium, they're also agreeing to be a part of whatever contract we have in place with, if the current contract is Hexagon. That is a financial obligation for us that we have to pay over a period of time, right? Even if a member drops out, that cost is still there until that contract ends. So we assumed that the departing agency will help us cover some of those costs until the end of the agreement. That's our thought, and we will lay out what we think those costs should be, and we'd like to get your feedback on it.
Since the questions or comments on termination? Any other questions or comments on this discussion item?
So I do have a, Melanie has said that currently PRMS portion is included in our audit, so it's part of our audit, so then we'll have to look at what changes if you become your own company. Otherwise, we can look at a way to divide it, so we'll have to look at what's proper.
Yeah, I think that all starts with getting some agreements here.
Right.
And then working with our auditors to break that out. We'll probably get it in the county audit.
So right now, we're paying, you know, we're urging with that. So, let's see if we can do to smooth that too.
Do we have any, actually, we have old business status update on Addison Police?
Thank you,
Do we have
Chairman.
an update?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So.
Right there.
As you all remember, in October of 2021, Addison gave notice that they would like to terminate the IG agreement and move forward with a new RMS solution. So it's been 2 years, and the members have asked for us to provide an kind of update on where we are with the Addison solution. Deputy Chief Selvig is here. I was going to speak for him, but he's here. He can speak for himself directly. But we have been in contact with Addison along the way. And if you don't mind, Deputy Chief Selvig providing a direct update on where we are with that process.
Well, I'd be happy to. Thank you very much. I'll give you everything I have. So our agency provided notice back October of 21. Since that time, we've looked at vendors and we've settled with and entered into an agreement with Axon. We are pursuing Axon RMS. We have been trying to nail them down on a deadline, but with the complete understanding that we have to give county something. You know, we're working with them on a rapid deployment team that they've recently rolled out with us. The best estimate that I have right now is they're expecting by July they will be ready for a cutover. Now that may speed up a little bit, it may fall behind. We've just started weekly meetings with Axon, trying to push them to say, hey, can you give us a better time? Can you give us something so that I can give the county an absolute, hey, this is the date that we are going to cut over? Because again, we completely understand that that the headaches this is causing you as well. So I should have it soon. Again, we're meeting every week now, pressuring them more and more. We have an on-site scheduled with them the first week of January, which that is their expectation at the latest that they will know for sure. But I'm trying to get that sooner. So that's where we're at. And I also understand that with this contract expiring April 30th, it will cause a problem as well. So if the group is open to allowing a month-to-month contract, we would certainly be interested in that as well.
It's, yeah, I mean, it's the IGA, it's the agreement would have to be amended to allow for that. That's something we have to vote on.
Yeah, with it expiring at the end of April, we're gonna have to do new IGAs anyway, so at which
Right.
time we would write something that would be amenable for the PRMS committee as a whole. We
Right.
could present it and do it terms of that one can be month to month. In the draft IGA, it does indicate with termination, individuals terminating, we would create a secondary agreement with that agency, enter in with them for terms of what you're indicating anyway. So the new IGA would kind of cover some of that.
it presents some very interesting challenges of having to build a system for more agencies that will be serving for a very short time, considering almost all these costs are fixed. So I'm just noting that that is a significant challenge from where I sit, because we just talked about this in the conceptual level, and now we have just a challenging set of circumstances.
I agree.
Having to talk through it.
Member France, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just gonna, Chief, I don't want to put you on the spot, but obviously by asking this question, I'm probably gonna put you on the spot. So don't answer if you don't want to. But I still haven't really heard, what the reason is for your dissatisfaction or desire to make a change. Was there something in particular, or can you summarize exactly what happened over the last couple of years?
I'd love to get that to you. I unfortunately don't have all of the details related to that. Some of it left with my predecessor, but I do know the decision was made. I could speculate as to some. I don't necessarily want to, because again, I don't have all the facts involved. But it just had to do with the overall service, and our director at the time felt that it wasn't matching what the residents and what the police officers in our agency were looking for. And since that time, we have committed, we've looked at a number of other vendors, and we have committed with Axon. And ideally, I would like to push them to avoid any issues, which you bring up a very good point up. I would like to push them to, hey, can we have a May 1st start date, which I'm trying to get them to avoid any overlap whatsoever. But I'm not entirely sure that's going to happen. So we would like to work with this committee and the county as much as we possibly can, because again, I understand the headaches by us pulling out is causing. So we're going to try our best to minimize that. But to your question, Member Franz, I don't have all the facts. I do know that there was a lot of discussion years ago surrounding the service that Hexagon was providing and frustrations both internally and externally within our agency.
Appreciate the candor. And if it's eminent to July and you guys have crossed the line of no return, I appreciate that too. And we probably need to get a letter out to them explaining what the costs are to terminate and make sure that we're giving them a heads up on that as well.
Chief Selvig, one more comment. So during your conversations with Axon, can you just please be very clear about what that cutover means? Are there no dependencies on either CAD or the existing RMS? Are there any integrations that need to be created for you to have this full set of data that you need to manage? Are they just generating a simple system with a report that may not satisfy your needs? I would just recommend that you get clarification from them on that.
Yes, I will.
So,
yep, absolutely.
Well, the committee's gonna have to work on a letter outlining what the costs are. Anything else on this matter or old business? Any new business? There being none. Motion and a second to
So
adjourn.
move.
Second.
Meeting will be
Jump right in already.
adjourned, and we'll send out notice of it's gonna be a special call in
special call in
January.
January.
We'll send those out.